The Chinese rule that builds wealth. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to build wealth effortlessly, while everyone else struggles for decades and ends up with nothing to show for it? Why a small percentage of people, barely 10% of the population, quietly rise to financial security, stability, and eventually freedom, while the remaining 90% stay trapped in the same cycle of earning, spending, and starting over? Most people blame income. Some blame luck, others blame their government, their job, or the economy. But the truth is far simpler and far older. Because buried deep inside centuries of Chinese financial philosophy lies one of the most powerful wealth-building principles ever created. A rule so simple, so elegant, so mathematically unbeatable, that those who follow it almost always end up rich over time. A rule used by merchants in ancient dynasties, by families who wanted to protect their lineage, by modern entrepreneurs, by investors, by self-made millionaires, and even by billionaires today. And yet, almost nobody in the West knows it. The rule is known by many names. But the most useful translation is this: the 3-3-3 rule, or, as it's sometimes called, the Chinese wealth triangle. Now, before we break down exactly what this rule is, how it works, and why it can transform almost anyone's financial future, you need to understand why it exists, because once you see the logic behind this ancient concept, you'll realize something terrifying. Most people fail financially not because they're irresponsible, but because the entire modern world is built to destroy this rule. Let's begin. The problem everyone ignores: look around. People don't just struggle with money, they suffocate under it. They earn more than previous generations, yet they feel poorer. They work harder, yet fall further behind. They accumulate things, but never wealth. How is that possible? Because they have no structure, no allocation, no strategy. Money comes in, money goes out, and the rest evaporates into impulse, lifestyle creep, and emotional decisions. Modern life turns money into sand, slipping through your fingers the moment you touch it. Ancient Chinese merchants figured this out centuries ago. They learned that the human brain, when exposed to opportunity, temptation, or stress, cannot be trusted with money. So they built a system to protect themselves from themselves. A simple rule that forced discipline, structure, and long-term thinking, no matter how emotional, chaotic, or unpredictable life became. This rule didn't depend on income, luck, or intelligence. It worked for farmers and nobles alike, for poor villages and wealthy dynasties, for one generation or 20, because it did something no modern financial advice ever teaches. It separates your money into its true purposes. The Chinese 3-3-3 rule. Explained. The rule divides every amount of money you earn into 3 realms. 1. 30% for stability. 2. 30% for growth. 3. 30% for protection. And the final 10%? That's yours to use freely. A psychological release valve that prevents burnout and keeps the rule sustainable for life. But each of these categories has a very specific meaning, not the Western meaning, not the budgeting schemes you've heard before. Let's break them down, because each one carries a piece of the puzzle. The first 30%, stability, the foundation of survival. This part is simple. Stability is your living expenses. Your roof, your food, your transportation, your essentials. The things that let you exist safely and reliably. But here's the crucial part. 30% means 30%. Not 31%, not 40%, not 60%. Historically, the moment someone lets their lifestyle grow beyond 30% of their income, their financial future collapses. Why? Because lifestyle is the hungriest monster in the financial world. Feed it once, and it only grows hungrier. This is why people earn more and feel poorer. Income goes up, but lifestyle rises faster. Ancient Chinese philosophy understood this truth. If your life becomes more expensive than your future dies. So the first 30% anchors you. It restricts lifestyle creep. It keeps your life stable even when income fluctuates. It prevents emotional spending. And it ensures you always live below your means, not by accident, but by design. The second 30%, growth, the engine of wealth. This is where the magic happens. Growth is not saving. Growth is not safety. Growth is not cash hoarding. Growth is multiplication. This 30% goes into entrepreneurship, investments, education, assets, and anything that compounds. It's the part of your income that works when you're asleep and grows when you're tired. Chinese merchants use this section to acquire inventory, expand trade routes, hire workers, buy land, invest in other ventures, accumulate precious metals, store grain and commodities, or learn new skills to increase future income. Today, it translates into stocks, businesses, crypto, real estate, side hustles, skill building, instruments that compound, and assets that pay you back. This 30% is non-negotiable. You don't use it for bills, you don't use it for emergencies, and you definitely don't use it for lifestyle. This part is what separates the wealthy from everyone else, because most people build their life first and invest what's left, but the Chinese wealth triangle teaches the opposite. The wealthy invest first and build their life around what remains. The third 30%, protection, the shield of families and dynasties. Now we reach the most misunderstood part, the part the West almost completely ignores. Protection is not savings. Protection is not investments. Protection is defense, financial armor. It includes emergency funds, insurance, reserves, cash positions, buffers, multi-month safety nets, health security, and debt elimination. This 30% exists for one reason, to prevent one crisis from destroying your entire life. Ancient merchants faced risk constantly. Storms, bandits, political changes, famine, war, drought. Protection was the only thing standing between survival and ruin. Yet today, most people spend until they are empty, and then pray nothing goes wrong. But the Chinese rule prepares you before disaster strikes. Because wealth building only works if you stay in the game, and protection ensures you never get knocked out. Now that you understand the structure of the 3-3-3 Chinese wealth rule, you're about to discover why it's so effective. Why it has survived dynasties, empires, wars, governments, recessions, and modern financial chaos. Because the true power of this rule is not in its simplicity, but in its interaction. When these three categories work together, stability, growth, protection, something extraordinary happens. Your wealth becomes inevitable, not fast, not flashy, not overnight, but inevitable. Let's continue. The secret mechanism behind the 3-3-3 rule. The ancient Chinese understood something modern society forgot. Wealth is not built by income. Wealth is built by balance. Think of your finances like a three-legged table. If one leg is missing, the table collapses. If one leg is longer than the others, it tilts and spills everything. Most people today build their lives on a one-legged or two-legged table. They invest without protection. They save without growth. They live without limits. They take risks without backup. They survive month to month with no plan. That's why they collapse. But the 3-3-3 rule forces equilibrium. It protects the weak points. It stabilizes the emotional impulses that destroy progress. It creates a perfect cycle. Let's break it down. How the three parts work together. 1. Stability keeps you disciplined. When your lifestyle is locked at 30%, you automatically live below your means. This eliminates lifestyle creep, impulsive spending, emotional purchases, financial stress, paycheck pressure, and the desire to flex success. And by keeping your lifestyle stable, you reduce the chance of being forced to spend your growth or protection money. Stability protects your plan. 2. Growth builds your future. Growth compounds. It multiplies. It expands your earning power. But, more importantly, it ensures your future will be bigger than your present. This is something most people never achieve. Most people grow their lifestyle faster than their income. The 3-3-3 rule does the opposite. Your income grows, your investments grow, your skills grow, your business grows, your opportunities grow. But your lifestyle doesn't. And that difference, that gap, is where freedom is born. 3. Protection keeps disaster from destroying everything. One emergency can erase 10 years of progress if you don't have a protection fund. That's why most people never escape the financial hamster wheel. Every time they start getting ahead, A crisis pulls them right back to zero. The Chinese rule solves this permanently. Protection is not passive. It's your financial shield. With proper protection, you can survive. Job loss, medical events, economic downturns, market crashes, unexpected expenses, broken equipment, business setbacks, temporary income drops. And because you're protected, your growth investments remain untouched, free to compound. Protection preserves your plan. The final 10%, the Freedom Fund. We haven't talked about the last piece yet, the remaining 10%. The ancient Chinese called this the Joy Fund, but a more accurate translation is the Freedom Fund. This 10% is spent however you want. On pleasure, on entertainment, on gifts, on luxuries, on adventures. Why? Because without joy, discipline breaks. Deprivation leads to rebellion. Rebellion leads to destruction. The Freedom Fund is the psychological release valve that makes the entire system sustainable for decades. It prevents burnout. It prevents resentment. It prevents emotional splurges that ruin financial plans. It says, yes, build wealth, but don't forget to live. This is why the ancient 3-3-3 rule works for people regardless of income. It respects human nature. The West tries to force budgeting with willpower. China built a system based on psychology. The real reason. This rule builds multi-generation wealth. Here's something shocking. If you follow this rule for long enough, you will eventually reach a point where your growth fund becomes your primary income. That means your money is earning more than your job. Your investments outperform your labor. Your assets cover your lifestyle. This is where wealth becomes permanent. Then something even bigger happens. Your protection fund becomes so large that no crisis can reach you. Then the final transformation occurs. Your lifestyle still costs 30% of your income, but your income now comes from wealth instead of work. This is the moment ancient families described as walking into freedom. At this stage, you can retire early, you can leave a legacy, you can invest in bigger ventures, you can pass wealth down safely, your family becomes financially stable. Your children inherit a plan, not just money. You become unshakable by economic storms. This is how dynasties were built, not through risk, not through luck, not through massive income, but through structure. Why the West fails to build wealth, the modern financial world encourages the exact opposite behavior. Spend first, invest later, save whatever is left, increase lifestyle endlessly. Take on debt to maintain status. Handle emergencies reactively. Chase high returns without protection. Repeat the cycle until retirement or burnout. People don't fail because they're irresponsible. They fail because their environment is designed to make them fail. The Chinese 3-3-3 rule is the antidote, a structure that fights modern chaos with ancient logic. How to apply the rule today. You don't need to implement it perfectly on day one. Just shift your direction. Step 1, calculate your real lifestyle cost. Step 2, reduce it toward 30%. Step 3, allocate 30% to growth consistently. Step 4, build your protection fund every month. Step 5, use your freedom fund guilt-free. Step 6, repeat for 5, 10, 20 years. The results will shock you. Most people underestimate how much wealth they could build if they simply protected their money from themselves. The 3-3-3 rule does exactly that. Final message. Most people will never build wealth not because they're lazy, but because they follow a system designed to keep them broke. But you now have the blueprint that sustained emperors, merchants, dynasties, and modern millionaires. A rule built on balance, structure, human nature, and inevitability. The question isn't whether it works, the question is whether you'll commit to it. Start today, and your future becomes predictable. Start later, and your future becomes risky. Never start, and nothing ever changes. If this opened your eyes, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more videos like this, deep, practical, mind-shifting financial strategies, make sure you hit subscribe. Your wealth journey begins right now.